Met me yet, my name's Sarah Lewis. I'm Research, Education and Policy Director at the Passivhaus Trust. And when I'm not immersed in my work at the Trust, I also spend my time delivering Passivhaus training for Passivhaus contractors and consultants as part of our partner organisation, Coaction, which is another really inspiring non-profit organisation. In fact, lots of people in this room are part of the Coaction team as well, which is lovely to see everyone. And then additionally, as a mother of two young girls, I am reminded every day of the importance of creating this sustainable built environment to really secure their future. And these awards are more than just a celebration. They are an opportunity for us to showcase what a transition to a net zero economy can look like. And in the face of kind of devastating news stories that we're always hearing about in the climate emergency, these projects that you're going to see today are really a kind of beacon of hope and inspiration for us all. They demonstrate what is possible and they provide us with a glimpse of the sustainable future that we can and really must create. So as the Passivhaus Trust turns 13, it's entering its teenage years. And as with all teenagers, it's critical to emphasize the importance of really good role models. And these projects that we're going to see today, these are our role models for the built environment. And they guide us forward as we mature both as an organization, but also as a construction sector. And they pave the way for a more sustainable and resilient future. So behind the scenes today, we have our incredible Passivhaus Trust team, as always, working tirelessly to ensure a pretty seamless, hopefully, and enjoyable experience, both for our in-person delegates, so everybody here, welcome, and also to our Guild delegates joining us online. They're ready to assist if there's any technical issues online, so please do just reach out in the chat if you've got any technical issues and someone will help you out. Throughout the session today, if you're using social media, please use the hashtag PHT Awards 2023 to join in the conversation and share your experiences. So let's make this a memorable and inspiring event as we celebrate the remarkable achievements of our Passivhaus community. And then one more technical announcement to make before I move on to the agenda. If people are collecting their CEF points for their renewal, you get 4 PHI points from attending this session today. So, okay, let's take a look at our agenda for the day. So we have a lineup of 10 exceptional finalists who are competing across 3 categories. We've got non-domestic, residential new build, and residential retrofit. So each of the finalists is going to have an opportunity to give you a brief presentation today, sharing why their project deserves the coveted title of overall winner for their category. And then to provide a bit of an extra glimpse into these remarkable pieces of work, we're also going to showcase a 2-minute video on each project. While we hope we have questions, time to address some questions from the audience after each presentation today, it's important to note that time is not our ally. As you can probably guess, we've got a very packed schedule to navigate through. So please do accept my apologies in advance if we don't have time to get to your questions. The punctuality of our speakers up front here is going to be very critical to managing to get some questions in. But even if the speakers are punctual, I'm slightly skeptical about whether we'll be able to squeeze in questions, but we'll see how we get on. So we're going to be running our first 2 categories back to back. So that's the non-domestic and the residential new build. After that, we're going to have a short 20-minute coffee break over in the garden room. For those of you who are joining online, I'm sorry you can't join us for coffee, but hopefully you'll have time to go make a quick cup of tea or coffee at home. After which time we are going to rejoin back in here to hear from our final category, the retrofit, and announce our 2023 UK Passivhaus Trust Award winners. So as always, these awards are peer accredited by the UK Passivhaus community. So the process consists of 2 stages. So firstly, we had a panel of esteemed UK Passivhaus experts, and this year we had John Butlin, Seb Lan Lomas, Nick Grant, and Yoganit Patel, dedicating their time and expertise to shortlist the projects from a pool of really exceptional entries this year. So we extend our sincere gratitude to each of them for their time that they put into that process. So thank you very much. I can't see them all, but I think I've seen most people today. Then the second stage, that's when you're all going to get involved, because that's when we do our member voting. So you've got the 500 plus Passive House Trust member organisations will all have their voting links now. That came to you by email about a week ago. You'll have re-got that email today, so hopefully everyone's able to find that. And you'll use that to vote on each of the project categories as we go through. For those joining in person, there's also a QR code on the back of your little pamphlet that looks like this. You can use the QR codes on the back to link to the voting. If you want to find out more about the projects, you can use the QR codes inside the brochure as well, which link to project information. If anybody has any problems voting during this first half, just come and find us at the reception desk at the coffee break, and we'll sort out taking your vote in person. Anybody who's getting issues online, just put it in the chat box and we'll sort that out. Okay. So one last thing to mention on the voting is that there's an overall award winner as well. So that's the overall People's Choice Award. And voting for the winner of this award is open to everybody. So while the previous three categories are just for Passive House Trust organisations, the People's Choice Award is open to everyone. So the winner of this award is selected across all of the finalists who are going to be presenting today. And the team are going to be posting links in the chat throughout the event today, so you should be able to find it if you're online. And again, just go to the back of your handout and you've got the QR code if you're in the room. Voting is going to remain open until after the final presentation of the day, and I'll definitely remind you to cast your votes, so you'll have the opportunity to do so. So I recommend you do wait until you've heard from all the finalists before casting your vote in that People's Choice Award. Okay, so what do we need you to do? So the event today is being recorded. For our online delegates, I encourage you to interact with each other and with the UK Passive House Trust team online using the chat box in the Zoom. If you've got a question for the speakers, you can post that in the Q&A box. As I said, it's going to be really tight, so we'll just see if we can get to some of those questions. But feel free to share your kind of comments and thoughts in the chat as we go along. And of course, if you're online, don't forget you'll need to have your preferred beverage on hand to raise a toast to the winners later on this afternoon. For all of you guys joining us in person, we're going to have this mic we can use as a roving mic. So if we have the opportunity for questions, we will come to you that way. And then don't forget to cast your votes, but I will be reminding you throughout the day. After the winner announcements, you're all going to be invited over to the garden room, where we'll have some refreshments and a celebration of our incredible project winners. And we'll also have a bit of a toast to the whole Passive House community. So before we proceed, I'd just like to extend a warm welcome to our award sponsors. So we've got Ecological Building Society, Knauf Insulation and Munster Joinery. Your support has made it possible for us to host these wonderful celebrations for all these projects, shortlisted projects, and of course our winners. So thank you very much. So I'm going to now just invite up Knauf to give a short 2-minute presentation.
Hello, just a few brief words from me. I'm here with Knauf Insulation, but I'd like to look back 10 years ago to when I was working in social housing. I was in Oldham in the centre on an estate called St Mary's, and next to where I was working there were some passive houses being built, and along with them some COFA Sustainable Homes Level 6 houses were being built at the same time, and I was fascinated with these, and I just was wondering what they were like to build and what they were like to live in. And it was pretty unanimous that the passive houses were easier to build for the builders who were there and better to live in, easier to live in for the people who were there. They didn't have any fussy heating controls or have to carefully manage their energy usage. And it reminded me that houses are for people. Houses are for people to live in. And I've tried to carry that forward to Knauf Insulation. As a manufacturer of rock mineral wool and glass mineral wool insulation, it's not good enough for us just to produce a good product. We have to also look at how that product is installed to make sure that it actually performs for the people living in a house after it goes in. And that's a lot of what Passive House is actually about. So when we were asked if we wanted to sponsor these awards, I just thought it was perfect. It's a really, really good fit for our products, because we know that a well-designed house, our products are relatively easy to install. when installed well, we know that our products perform. And they perform for the people who will ultimately end up living there, who just want a simple house. So thank you very much for having us today and allowing us to sponsor these awards. Best of luck to absolutely everyone from everyone at Knauf Insulation.
Thank you, Christopher. Munster Joinery.
Hello, everybody. My name is Roger Costello. I am the Chief Sales Officer for Munster Joinery UK, and I'm delighted to be here today representing the business as we are a proud co-sponsor of today's event. The variety of projects on display today, it's truly great to see the spectrum of builds and the pathways taken to achieve the end goals. It just proves that passive standards, passive builds, the ideals of passive house they're attainable for everybody. That's something at Munster Joinery that we're very aware of. And in terms of product line and stuff like that we produce ourselves, we have 8 passive standard products, windows and doors, PVC, timber, composites, and as everything, the installation of products, how they actually get to site, how they perform on site when they're in position, as well as the manufacturing of it. It's all one component, and particularly with the components and the manufacturing of it, it's something that we're acutely aware of. We have looked into the manufacturing side of things ourselves. We're aware of the transport and the outputs that everything's involved in. So as well as having products that would perform to the relevant standards when they're in situ, we've also done internal auditing in terms of our own performance. So on that side of things, we currently produce 33% of our own energy, which is all green. We've got 2 wind turbines on site, which produce 2.1 megawatts of energy or of electricity every year. Our biomass unit generates 2.8 megawatts. We offset 9,000 tons of carbon every single year in terms of our manufacturing and production. 85% of all our of all of our waste produced is recycled, and that is growing. And as well as this, our gas and our electricity consumption year on year is reducing, despite the ever-growing and expansion of the factory itself. So like I said, we're really happy to be involved today. We're aware that the biggest change, a generational change in the building regulations is about to occur in 2025 with the implementation of future home standards. So these changes will result in a vast array of passive house procedures being brought into the mainstream building and scaled up to a scale that never seen before. So I've no doubt that normalising such practices, coupled with the market's awareness of what can and should be achieved going forward, will only be a positive benefit to both passive house and the building industry as a whole. And it's Munster Joinery's intention to continue supporting the UK Passivhaus Trust in future events, and I look forward to seeing what results happen today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And our final sponsor, Ecological Building Society.
Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen in the room and online. My name's John Lee. I'm the Community and Business Development Manager at Ecology Building Society. We've been, I think, in this from the start, really, as one of the founder patron members of Passivhaus Trust. I know our recently departed Chief Exec, Paul Ellis, was a massive supporter, and so much so that the Society developed bespoke mortgage discounts off our rates for Passive House certified projects and for Enefit, and those discounts stay today. In fact, this year, whilst it might be swimming against the tide a bit with interest rate rises, we've increased the discounts on those certified properties to try and keep them as affordable and encourage people to achieve the Passive House standard. I think, you know, for us, it's an area that we've seen really substantial growth in. It's still a smaller part of our lending than we would like. We would love to do more, and certainly get involved both on the residential and non-residential or community development side to encourage best practice, and we very much look forward to playing our part. Congratulations to the Trust on their 13th anniversary. As a father of a teenage daughter, I realise you will, of course, now know everything. It's truly, really a pleasure to be a sponsor of these fantastic awards. Look forward to hearing more about the shortlisted categories, and thanks very much for your attention.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all of our sponsors. As I said, it's wonderful that they were able to support us running this event today. Okay, so now what you guys have all been waiting for, the first category, this is our non-domestic category. So before I go ahead and introduce the shortlisted projects, I just want to take a moment to reflect on the remarkable journey that we have had over the past 13 years in this sector. So the landscape of non-domestic passive house projects in the UK has been expanding pretty rapidly, and it encompasses a really diverse range of buildings now. So we've got community centres and schools to office complexes, universities and even hospitals. For anyone who was at the UK Passivhaus Trust conference last year, might have got the pleasure of visiting Exeter swimming pool. So these buildings in this non-domestic category are often actually, the non-passive house ones I should say, are often characterised by their huge energy demand. So passive house really gives us an opportunity in this sector to dramatically reduce the energy demand of these buildings. It offers us a solution which enables us to do that kind of dramatic energy reduction and to create, therefore, a more sustainable built environment. So without further ado, let me introduce our first shortlisted project, the Earn Campus. So I'm going to welcome Paul Miller from Hamilton Architects to the stage. Paul is going to present this project, and our panel of judges was truly impressed by the outstanding accomplishments of this remarkable project, which I've also visited, and it's absolutely wonderful. If you have the opportunity, do go for a visit. Despite facing numerous challenges along the way, the team's dedication and hard work paid off, and it resulted in the project being completed amazingly within the scheduled time frame and also within the allocated budget. So well done, team. That's fantastic. And I just want to extend our, from the Trust, congratulations to every member of the team involved in this visionary project, which delivered the world's first passive house premium project. So the floor is yours, Paul.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm joined at the podium by Cormac Freehill, our M&E consultant for this project. The Earn Campus is the largest passive house premium education building in the world. The Crescent Plan was inspired by the arc of the River Earn and houses 2,800 students. A split-level section takes advantage of the site contours and features a 15-metre-high orientation atrium. The campus is designated a UN Centre of Excellence, and it was awarded the RICS UK Project of the Year for its design and community benefit. It generates 4 times as much energy as it uses, and it's a living exemplar for technology students. There were 3 central design drivers: educational requirements, the passive house brief itself, and our response to the site. The result represents a true landmark in the town of Enniskillen. Its fully glazed 200-metre-long atrium affords spectacular views across the River Earn and enhances internal legibility. The design responds to the context of the sloping site and the curved boundary, and the roof features 3,000 square metres of PV panels.
Good afternoon. So internally, the building has a treated floor area of 7,167 metres squared, which includes a large feature atria towards the north facade. The ventilation system within the building is a mixture of mechanical ventilation and natural ventilation to deal with potential overheating. All the classroom ventilation systems are monitored for CO2 and temperature control, and react to the demands of the building and associated energy use. The shape of the building and the main atria, which you'll see in some of the images, provides significant natural light into the building, which is a key feature. And that is complemented by daylighting sensors to ensure that lighting levels are minimised throughout the year. The energy performance of the building has been quite spectacular, I suppose. When assessed against the previous Earn campus, the building has shown a 95% reduction in heating demand across the campus, a net cost saving on heating bills of 54,000 per annum, and approximate running cost of £2.51 metre squared per year. As Paul mentioned, one of the key features within the design is 3,000 square metres of PV panels, which are complemented by 450 kilowatt hour battery storage on the site, meaning the building is at all times generating electricity and using that electricity to deliver the energy use within the building. That system is supplemented by air-to-water heat pumps generating thermal energy, and there is gas-up boiler provision to supplement any peaks within the annual demand. The average summer temperature has been recorded 21.7. Again, that's part of the coordination of the architectural and different systems within the building. As I mentioned, we have natural ventilation within that main atria, which allows the building to ventilate, breathe, and ultimately cool itself. The brise-soleil has been carefully selected to minimise the heat gain within the space during peak solar conditions. Cooling is via opening vents, and one of the key features of the design is 800 linear metres of earth tube, which is in the car park, which is used to temper the air in winter conditions and also cool it then in warmer summer conditions. As I mentioned, the atria space is ventilated through stack ventilation. The building is largely served through a combination of underfloor heating and some air heating in some instances. The main frame is steel with timber frame wall elements. A huge part of the design process was reducing the thermal barriers within the project. The north elevation is highly insulated timber framing, and the clad in brickwork and coloured fibre cement boards. And again, the thermal bridging was a huge aspect of the design. The quality management of the project, obviously as part of the design process, there was an awful lot of analysis done through the Passive House planning package, carefully coordinating the different manufacturers and detailing around the design. On site, there was very much a collaborative process with the contracting team, very much learning together, gaining experience together, and that was a collaborative process from day one. There was a huge upskilling process with the workforce on the contractors team, making them aware of Passive House, the principles behind it, educating them on the do's and don'ts, and ultimately helping to deliver a successful scheme. Clerk of Works were present on site to record progress, to deal with queries and convey that back to the design team. And again, that open dialogue was hugely important between the design team and the contractor. Industry engagement, speaking to specialists, getting that feedback and lessons learned was a huge part of the project as well. And ultimately the air tightness as a key characteristic of meeting that Passive House standard was something that we were all very focused on, and actually bettered what was tabled at the designs. We achieved an air tightness of 0.3 within the final assessment. The construction cost has been assessed at £3.5 thousand per metre squared, running costs at 18 K per metre squared per annum, and comparative cost of £51,000.
This is an exemplary project for many reasons. It's proof that Passive House principles can be scaled up to a large building. The pioneering design has encouraged in excess of £250 million worth of Passive House public sectors in Northern Ireland. And as you've just been informed about, the campus has won many awards and accreditations. So why does Earn Campus deserve your vote? Because, and I hope you'll agree, it's exemplary, it's pioneering, and it's inspirational. Thank you.
The impetus for this project stems from the college's long history in working in the area of sustainable development, and in particular the curriculum to support sustainable development in this area. So when the opportunity presented to build a building, it made perfect sense that we would want to bring all of that experience to bear and build an exemplar building.
We went for Passive House Premium because we had already built a Passive House building in the form of the Crest Centre, and also in 2019 the UK government declared a climate emergency. So going for the best in class, the best standard we could build to, was an aspiration of the governance of the college, and that will future-proof the building.
The design developed as a response to the site, including the curved southern boundary, and as a result of firstly the Passive House ambitions of the client, and secondly the educational requirements for the accommodation.
We got an overall air tightness of 0.36, which is fantastic for a construction team, both on design and on site, that had never done it before. And when it comes to thermal bridging, we had over 4 kilometres of thermal bridging in this project, and all the details were well mitigated for heat loss. The value of the PHPP software in just how much accuracy and information is needed to go into that, and that in turn, now 18 months later, leaves to the building performing in the way it should. We've monitored the building and it's coming in with an average temperature of 21 degrees, which is as planned.
It's the world's first Passive House Premium educational building and the largest Passive House Premium building recognised in the UK.
The South West College and all of our staff, students and everyone who comes to the college is extremely proud of this wonderful project. I see it really as the jewel in the crown of our estate because it delivers such a great learning environment.
We can just give a huge round of applause to the team for that project. Okay, I would now like to introduce our second finalist in the non-domestic category. So this is the UK's first Passive House Health Centre. So joining us today to present this remarkable project are Peter Rankin, and who's representing Tully Foster, but also the client side, Julian Humphreys is representing the NHS. So these are the guys who are behind this visionary, groundbreaking development. So this was a prefabricated modular design, which really showcases the potential for this kind of affordable and speedy construction while maintaining these excellent building performance by meeting the Passive House standard. So with the potential to save the NHS millions of pounds and transform healthcare infrastructure, I am pleased to welcome Peter and Gillian to share the inspiring story behind this project. Over to you guys.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Peter Rankin from Tully Foster, and this is Julian from Community Health Partnerships and the NHS. You've had the introduction, that's the slide. Let's get going with this bit so Julian can do a quick introduction.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. And on a day of today is the 75th anniversary of the NHS, so it's appropriate that we're here celebrating an innovative health centre. The story behind Fosil Health Centre, a very urban site in the middle of Coventry, is long and tortuous, and we've only got 6 minutes, and it would take significantly longer. But it's a small 600 square metre health centre serving 10,000 patient list. The history to it is significant, but ultimately CHP, the company I work for, took a leap of faith to build this to passive standards, use of off-site technologies, and to deliver BREEAM Excellent, and to meet all NHS guidance and technical memorandum.
So for the layout and planning, the next slide, it's a very simple building. It's 2 stories, actually 1.5. So this bit has got staff accommodation above it, upstairs, and the whole of the ground floor is for patient exercise. Sorry, I'll do that. I'll stay here alternatively and just do it this way as I can't get it done. So we took over a design by somebody else. We turned the building round through 90 degrees to put the pink consulting rooms where you meet your doctor facing a new strip of green. The site itself is unbelievably brownfield. The whole of the site was a swimming pool at one point, and all the building was tipped into the pool, which gave a few difficulties when we were on site. But the design is deliberately contemporary as a contrast to the surroundings. And the interesting photographs are of the front, where we have a pergola to celebrate the entrance and also to provide shading for the southwest facing waiting room, which gives it a good character. And we meet NHS daylighting standards and the technical standards for that. The next slide is to do with the energy. So this building has been monitored for the first year of its operation, and the electricity consumption is almost exactly as predicted by PHPP, only about 200 kilowatts difference, 0.6%. And we've achieved this by insulating the outside of the building, air source heat pumps for the heating, but also not mentioned here is also point of use hot water. People wash their hands a lot in health buildings. If you do it conventionally with a boiler and a hot water cylinder, you're pumping hot water around the building all the time, keeping it nice and hot in the summer. It also needs to be drained down to get rid of Legionella and other pathogens every 6 months. It's a huge cost, huge expense, and doesn't really work with a passive house. So we went for point of use electric hot water. And we met all the passive house criteria, which you can see on the right there, with an air change per hour of 0.6 air changes in terms of air tightness. The user experience, I'll hand over to Julian to talk about that, and then I'll come back to you about how we dealt with comfort.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you, Peter. Overall, user experience within the facility has been an interesting journey, is all I could say. As our tenant moved in, and we had a very hot summer last summer, they insisted on opening the windows. And it took a little while, but this year, the June summer that we had, all's well, because they've learned from their experience. So there was a bit of a journey for us and our tenant, but generally, we now seem to be out the other side and working successfully in operating and maintaining the building.
So the building has zero overheating. That's partly because we've got cooling on the supply air ducts in the building, and I'll talk about ventilation in a second. But we also carried out a TM59 overheating assessment without cooling, and it still meets the criteria. As you can see, we've got the pergola that helps with the shading of the windows to the waiting room, and we've got shading around all the other windows that we've got as well. But the main challenge for the building is ventilation. NHS technical standards require a lot of air changes. We have 5 consulting rooms for doctors within the health centre. We have 2 treatment rooms. Treatment rooms are where you might go to have a dressing changed or to have some other procedure carried out by nursing or doctor staff. And when those procedures are going on, we need 10 air changes per hour. So if you're used to a passive house standard of 0.3, 0.5, you need a bit more than that. So we've got a lot of ventilation kit in the building. We've got 2 big Swagon units that you can see there. And we dealt with the treatment rooms by having a single big Zender unit per room, which can run at the minimum for normal usage and then boost it up to maximum for when treatment activities are going on. And then when the building is closed, the ventilation is shut right back down to sort of trickle for when the building is unoccupied, with purge operation at the beginning and the end of each day. That was really difficult. And the graph you can see there is the difference in ventilation rates that are needed for the treatment rooms compared to other rooms within the building. So we now come to construction.
Thanks, Peter. One of the ambitions when we set the brief for this as the client was we want to adopt and secure passive accreditation, BREEAM Excellent accreditation, and the use of off-site construction. So aligning to the Manchester Government principles, construction playbook principles. And that was a challenge. The other thing that happened, what happened in March 2020? Oh yes, we had a COVID pandemic. So we just completed the design work and we just about got everybody on the straight and narrow, and COVID hit. But the use of the modular and use of porter cabin modular volumetric units, over the life of the programme of the work, we believe it saved over 13 weeks. We hang our hat on 13. But it was lightweight construction. It was an easy understanding. And we had to do some work with porter cabin and Toolies and the rest of the design, rest of the project team to get them to understand how that methodology and how the passive standard would be adopted. COVID was a challenge, and we didn't do as much off-site as we would do if we were repeating it today. But we have delivered the first NHS passive accredited healthcare building in the UK. And we're proud of it.
So, okay. We'll just do a quick closing one. I think Julian has done that. The last one is a quick slide on the cost. It's half the price of the equivalent building over 25 years. And we've also, it's been published a lot for the government. And the last one is all the people we've done it for, which is the people of Coventry.
Indeed, thank you.
The fundamental brief from NHS England is 10,000 patient list GP practice. So we proposed that we'd use Foes Hill as a pilot study, the first passive house healthcare building in the UK. The business case is predicated on the potential savings to the health system. Over the first 25 years, this building is likely to cost about £6 million. A traditional build would be double that. The brief was use of off-site technologies. We can access the NHS SBS framework, so we had a conversation with a couple of the framework contractors, formally appointing porter cabin to deliver this scheme. We had a flat slab on one day in December. 3 days later, we had a watertight building.
So this is one of the two Swagon units that we have providing the ventilation. The main challenge for building a passive house health centre is achieving the ventilation rates that are needed for the different spaces within the building. The ventilation rates are higher in order to control infection. In the treatment rooms, when treatment activities occur, the air change rates for those rooms is 10 air changes per hour. So in order to meet that standard, we actually had to have one MVHR unit per room for each of those two rooms in order to be able to boost it when dressings were taken off and there's potentially infections in the air.
The performance data, the energy consumption for the building is all exactly as we forecast, and that is a testament to passive.
This building has proved that the financial reasons for building it are the reasons for doing it, and you get the health and the energy savings as well.
Great, thank you guys, absolutely fantastic project. Okay, now let's turn our attention to our final shortlisted project in the non-domestic category. So I am thrilled to introduce Hatbridge Primary School, which is a shining example of what can be achieved. It's been designed by Archetype, and it not only boasts remarkable low energy demand, but also generates renewable energy on site. So it's a really exceptional project, and it really helps to kind of show the power that Passive House has in creating really sustainable and inspiring spaces for our children to learn. So I'm going to introduce Christian from Archetype, who's going to go into a bit more detail on the project for you all.
Brilliant, thank you very much. I could talk forever, so I am going to set a timer so I know where I am. Oh, can't do that. Oh, I'll give up on that. Right. Welcome to Hackbridge. It's the first Passive House Plus school in the UK. Initially conceived some 8 years ago on a site of real natural importance, meant that the design had to be exemplar. Its delivery proves that we can achieve holistic, sustainable buildings and net zero carbon in operation now. This is the Sutton One Planet Living project goals, and we suggested to the council and the planners that Passive House Plus was the only way to guarantee the performance needed. The site has been regenerated and made more biodiverse, still allowing for the rainwater to channel across the site. The design concept centres around a courtyard, acting as a home space, protecting the main road, protecting the children from the main road with the buildings, and opening up the views to the wetlands beyond. The main teaching block is north-south orientated to provide optimal performance, and the community building going north-south is in direct relationship to Bedshed development next door. It really is an amazing space that inspires the children who are there. High quality sweet chestnut timber cladding was chosen to complement the beautiful site in a pattern that's been described as high-tech log cabin. We designed the school to be optimum for learning, providing great daylight, high ceilings, excellent air quality and acoustics, and an elegant colour scheme that really enables the highest quality of pupils' experience. The pupils also help to bring their own character through co-creating of the wildlife artwork situated throughout the building. I do so love this quote to Prince Harry, explaining the fact that the building is made from wood. And it literally is. From the internal finishes through to the external cladding, the structure and the insulation are all made from wood. On top of this, and on top of the benefits of Passive House, we also look to use a materials palette with low VOCs and natural finishes, which all help to significantly reduce and drive down upfront embodied carbon. So the A1 to A5 is actually only 499 kilograms of CO2e per metre squared without sequestration, or 405 with, which is a really ambitious figure for a primary school of 2 stories. The design carefully considers orientation, and the amount of glazing on each facade is carefully designed and shaded correctly, with overhang, brise soleil and timber fins on the west-facing facade. The head teacher and pupils love the space, and they notice the difference between this school and their other schools as they transition between the two. We're undertaking building performance evaluation and are confident that we will achieve zero carbon in operation later this year. But it's already significantly above the DFE, LETI and RIBA energy standards. In terms of construction lessons, going from Passive House to Passive House Plus requires a lot more technology, which can have benefits such as this bio-solar green roof, or the ground source heat pump and thermal store with its free cooling providing resilience against a changing climate. But it also makes it more complex, with challenges around maintenance and delivery of performance of the new technologies rather than the building itself. But the Passive House standard really does help to ensure that high quality building is delivered. Even through the challenge of the first contractor going into administration, the team worked with the new contractor on site, were clear on the objectives, quality and standards that needed to be met to achieve the final delivery. The majority electric building costs less than the electricity bill of the electricity bill section of a typical school. And those savings, already some £11,000, become even greater as the fuel bills rise. See the orange estimate for the changes this year. And with only 15% cost lift for the first ever Passive House Plus school compared to the national average in 2016, of which most of it is likely to be from its London location and the high quality materials and other things used, it really indicates that this standard should be readily achievable at or near cost parity going forward. The exemplar project has been shared widely to really ensure a higher bar is set in our educational design standards, with tours on site with the UK Green Building Council, showing it to the Department for Education and even a member from the Committee for Climate Change, as well as featured in lots of publications, setting out that the future of education really looks like this building. We think this project deserves to win, not just because of the above, but because it truly demonstrates sustainability in all its forms. And it's inspiring, and that improves the lives of those attending Hackbridge Primary School. As my son said this morning when he went to see it previously on an RIBA tour, it's fantastic. Why can't I have a school like that? Thank you.
Okay, don't go too far forward. It just went through a cave like. Isn't the sign? No, man, it's still there. It's still there. I can see it. I don't do this every time I look down.
The setting here is so special. It's a perfect environment for kids to discover nature, for them to explore, for them to learn about the environment. The site is on a very protected area of the Metropolitan Open Land, just next to Bedsed as well. It meant that in order to get planning, it needed to be very light touch in terms of materiality and in terms of operational carbon performance as well. So Archetype put forward the proposal to go Passive House Plus.
I want you to, in this lesson, think about what makes our school eco. What do we do at Hackbridge Primary School to make our school eco?
We've got like solar panels on the roof.
And what does that, why?
To
what
save
for?
like electricity.
With Passive House Plus, we really did have to push ourselves out of our comfort zones. It was the same process in terms of the orientation and the form and the development early on of the building, and making sure that the energy demand was as low as possible from the outset. But to make it Passive House Plus, we had to go that step further. So we had to introduce more renewable technology. So we've got the ground source heat pump and also PV array on the roof. The kids know that it's built of wood from the inside out, from the timber frame to the recycled newspaper as insulation, right through to the timber cladding. And they can feel that it's a natural, a healthy classroom to be in.
The fact that a lot of it is wood and there's a lot of internal wood makes it a calmer atmosphere. And the air always feels clean. It's quite inspiring for the children. They're all very eco-warrior-like, and they do enjoy that side of the building, and they take those benefits home with them.
And we saw a red, blue and brown dragonfly, and there's also skidders. They go like this.
It does represent what is achievable already, that we've got the tools to design to a net zero carbon standard. It's not something for the future that we can aspire to do, we can do it now.
What a fantastic project. I think my girls also would agree with your son. They'd be very excited to go to that school. Okay, before we move on to our next category, this is a friendly reminder. This is your 1-minute warning for voting in the non-domestic category. So if you're online, go to your emails, find your voting link. If you're in person, use the QR codes, which are at the back of your leaflets, and vote for who you want to win in the non-domestic category. Voting is also open for the People's Choice Award winner. but you can save that until the very end of the session today, because you only get to vote once in the People's Choice Award. So this is your moment for voting in non-domestic. Anybody having technical problems in the room, pick them up at the coffee break. Anyone online having technical problems, put it in the chat. That's your telephone. Okay, great. So that is voting closing for the non-domestic category. Everyone good? Okay. Right, so now it's time to shift our focus, and we're going to look at the new build residential category. So before we dive into the shortlisted projects, I thought I'd just take a bit of a brief wander down memory lane. So as Passive House continues to make its mark in this sector, we've witnessed projects evolving from kind of just the small one-off single-family homes to much larger developments of multi-family developments and increasingly multi-rise, so multi-story developments as well. Passive House is also making it into master plans across whole cities, so cities like Exeter and York or Glasgow and Edinburgh, among others. Shortlisting as a result for this category was an immense challenge due to the exceptional quality of submissions from right around the country. So in addition to our 3 shortlisted projects, I want to extend a special congratulations to Chester Road, who got a special commendation. So well done, Chester Road. And if you want to know more about the Chester Road project, have a look in the latest Passive House Trust newsletter, because we feature that project there. So now, without further ado, I am going to introduce the first presentation in this category. So our first speaker is going to be Anne Thorne from Anne Thorne Architects, and she's going to be presenting this exceptional project, which really combined Passive House comfort and efficiency with shared community spaces and low carbon living. So it's an alternative housing development which tackles both loneliness and climate action. So really, really valuable project, and very excited to hear about Cannock Mill co-housing. So over to Anne.
Afternoon, everybody. Cannock Mill co-housing is in Colchester, Essex. There are 23 houses and flats to Passive House Classic standards, and a Grade 2 listed mill, which you can see at the far side of the slide, which is the common house. Co-housing is an intentional community. People have their own homes and advocate sharing, such as guest bedrooms, cars, cooking, etc., all as an integral part of saving resources. The houses are in 2 blocks, one with a passageway, which you can see here, to allow the springs and wildlife to reach the pond. 6 flats make up the 3rd block, which is just over there at the top. Next to the listed mill. The site has a large mill pond, and there is an 11-metre difference in height from top to bottom. The project is within walking distance of the city centre, but sits within the green valley of the River Bourne. It's bordered by busy streets, including the locally listed Miller's House and the mill. Deep green roofs hold back rainwater, which is slowly released via the rainwater pipes to the porous road surface, and then filters into rain gardens and into the pond, and finally into the river. No surface water goes into drains, into the public drains. Landscaping makes the most of the existing mill pond. Everyone has a private as well as use of the communal space, and here vegetables and fruit trees provide produce for the meals in the mill. Concern that the houses would be overshadowed by the trees and the north sloping site led to living rooms and balconies on the top floor. The houses and flats are designed to lifetime home standards. The floor construction allows for a lift to be installed. Staircases are wide enough for chairlift and future openings for hoists, etc. Plywood, bamboo flooring, and natural paint finishes create a recyclable and low VOC environment. North-facing windows give a view to the pond and the mill. Sliding folding doors enable living rooms to open out onto the south-facing balcony, and garages to be multi-purpose. For example, 2 pottery studios and a grand piano, all facilitated by car sharing. Our PHPP predictions were pessimistic. The houses are more effective than anticipated. The balconies form a means of escape, enabling an open layout where warm air rises to the top floor living rooms. Several occupants have actually taken out the only top floor radiator. Households tend to be smaller than predicted, and cooking and eating together saves energy. By sharing monitored results from the first year of occupation, the group has seen the value of adapting to and sharing passive house principles, such as nighttime purging. The summer comfort strategy for houses and flats, MVHRs with summer bypass, and good cross ventilation for summer purging, tilt and turn windows are secure when open. Houses are away from the main road, so noise is not a problem. 3D modelling showed that overhanging roofs would provide shading over the south-facing balconies, mitigating heat gain to the top floor. These balconies also oversail the floor below. A co-houser said, "I see the sunrise from my bed in the morning, have lunch on my sunny balcony, and fresh air circulates through the house all year. I'm amazed that my heating and hot water costs less than the internet. But above all, I enjoy a peaceful sense of well-being from the light and airy rooms, the bamboo floors, the natural wood staircase, and thoughtful layout." South-facing windows on the flats have metal external Venetian blinds for shading, security, and privacy, and allows the tilt and turn cross ventilation. At night, the scheme has a gentle glow, which is just enough to see around the site and get home after a few drinks in the mill, but allows the night sky and nightlife to flourish. Coloured lime render on houses requires little maintenance. Timber cladding is sweet chestnut and decking is green oak, robust timbers. Windows are factory finished or stained. The grouping of incoming services in the external cupboards simplified achieving airtightness. Inside, webbed I-beams are used for service distribution and a 25mm service zone in the inner skin of the construction. Combi boilers are easily maintained and MVHR controls are straightforward. The stud wall timber frame is clearly applicable at scale and could have been greatly simplified on a more straightforward site. Cost limitations restricted the use of energy generation, and we concentrated on fabric first. Blown insulation was economic and efficient, supplemented with wood fibre and sheep's wool insulation. Site supervision of subcontractors was inadequate, even though the contractor ran the toolbox talks included as a clause in the bill of quantities. What was special about this build? The use of natural materials and breathing wall construction, a challenging north-facing site, a listed mill, and a pond required a bold and compact solution. The integration of the SUD system to mitigate against future flooding and protection of wildlife, the incorporation of lifetime home standards, the positive response and involvement of the occupants in the design. And last but not least, the scheme was self-financed by a group originally of 8 households, growing to 23 during the build process. What would you do differently? Insist on suppliers' installation and better supervision, particularly of plumbing and door and window installation. Use a nominated timber frame subcontractor from the outset for greater involvement in design. Oops. Yep. Finally, thanks to Cannock Mill Co-Housing, who had faith in this project, the hard-working design team, and to all at Anthorn Architects, but especially Junko Suetaki, who for almost 20 years has made a wonderful contribution to this and many other projects.
Co-housing is an intentional community where people come together who want to have their own house but to want to share lots of facilities.
One of the things I really love is sharing the gardening. You can go out and do a bit of digging, weeding, building something. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, gardening isn't my great hobby, but there's lots of other things we share that I really enjoy. I mean, actually, the simple pleasure of cooking and eating together, I think, is really great.
I like the independence, and I like the grounds, and I like the garden, and I like my neighbours. So we have...
Do you like me?
I like you, yes.
That's nice.
The project started when a group of us decided we wanted to make substantial changes to our lives, looking at co-housing and also sustainable living and passive house. And so we started looking for sites. 10 years later, we finally found one. It's quite a difficult site. It's 11 metres from top to bottom and north-facing slope. There's also a lovely but challenging mill pond and a Grade 2 historic building. There were 8 households who bought the site, and so with those 8 households we came up with the fundamental design of the terrace, and so the mill was perfect for the common house. There was a limit to what we were allowed to do there, but the houses we made to the best passive house standards we could afford, which was Passive House Classic.
I was slightly dubious about the claims made for Passive House, and it exceeds all expectations.
It's just luxury because the temperature is even, the air is fresh, and the Passive House really works for me.
What a fantastic project. Thanks for sharing that one, Anne. And it sounds like a fantastic set of clients as well, which is lovely. Okay. Well, can we progress the slides on when we're able to? While that's happening, I am going to introduce our next finalist in the new build category, which is a striking architectural gem. It's an idyllic home and office which has been brought to life by Martin McRae and Mary Grant from Paper Igloo. So their ambitious project is the self-build project. It's in the historic conservation village of Kippen, which is near Stirling. And it had a kind of box inside a box timber frame project, which I'm sure Mary will describe much better than I am able to. And it achieved both Passive House certification, but also achieved the Scottish Buildings Regulations gold levels for sustainability. Yeah. And it really stands as a testament to their commitment to sustainable living. So I'm going to let Mary come up and introduce the project. Mary.
Hi everyone, and thanks Sarah. So I can do this from here, right. Austro Passivhaus is a detached family home in central Scotland. In 2017, the building achieved classic certification. It also meets multiple voluntary sustainability standards, has low embodied carbon, and is a dynamic piece of contemporary architecture. The project was mostly self-built by myself and my husband Martin over a 6-year period. This site is out with the conservation area in the village, and in planning terms constituted a backland development. It's quite a bit lower than the main road, and as we had no streetscape to continue and the buildings around are a mixture of ages, styles and sizes, we had a certain degree of architectural freedom. We decided to purposefully set the challenge of designing a simple form with a clear hierarchy of spaces, yet create a building that was more dynamic than it perhaps initially conveyed. A building that could surprise, delight, and create comfortable, livable spaces while still celebrating the contemporary architecture that we love. Our strategy for making decisions about construction was based on health, well-being, vapor permeability, and avoiding material toxicity. We attained all 8 aspects of the gold standard in the Scottish Building Regs, which is the highest holistic sustainability level above the baseline. Retrospective analysis has shown that the building exceeds the RIBA 2030 climate challenge metrics despite all decisions being made back in 2013. One important gold standard aspect is water management. In addition to practical water saving measures within the building, we wanted to give the journey of the rain clarity in the landscaping. The sedum roof covering attenuates about 40% of the rainwater, and any excess empties into an overflow catch pit filled with reclaimed stones and ultimately to a water butt and rain garden planter below some alder trees. This stone garden also provides excellent habitat for invertebrates and other small animals. The site is steeply sloping with almost 6 metres difference in height between the top and the bottom. At the lowest southernmost end is a burn which flows in and out of the garden, and the building sits at the highest point to maximise views to the tree canopy opposite and across the field to the west. The principle of form-following function led to this idea of a box within a box. The inner box is a tactile, timber-clad sculptural form present in every space. It is a functional, well-planned core containing all the services, circulation and hidden storage, and so serves the primary spaces to the perimeter. The open plan arrangement around it also creates a fun circuit, which friends, children and our cats enjoy racing around in equal measure. The articulation of this core leads to contrast and drama by design. These purposefully darker, calmer spaces always end in daylight, drawing you through the building and leading seamlessly into the bright, well-lit spaces that connect you to the garden outside. The outer box rain screen of naturally weathered timber cladding, with its seemingly ad hoc yet carefully planned fenestration design, is optimally orientated to take advantage of solar gains whilst avoiding overheating. Kippen has no gas, and some of our neighbours have regular coal deliveries, with oil remaining the predominant fuel in this and nearby villages. This was a critical motivation in our desire to create a low-demand building. In terms of energy consumption, the building is routinely performing within a few % of the predicted demand. In terms of heating, we have 4 relatively small IR panels throughout the ground floor, all individually thermostatically controlled, and no heating whatsoever upstairs. This house is the most comfortable we have ever lived in, and the only adjustment we've had to make is switching to a 4-tog duvet all year round. This level of performance has been helped and achieved by keeping the services strategy simple and efficient. All ducts, pipes and cable lengths are minimised by virtue of the compact space planning. We have 3 main technologies in the house that you can see here, and both the PV and solar thermal are optimally positioned facing south with minimal shading. The building is usually occupied by 2, however, with family and guests, there are often 4 of us. The certification frequency of overheating was 4% based on the usual stress test parameters. All rooms and circulation spaces have opening windows, so purge ventilation can also take place with bedroom doors shut, and we have 2 roof lights that we can open to increase the airflow. We have a large double height space in the southwest corner, so numerically we had to offset this by paying particular attention to our psi values. We've continually monitored the temperature difference throughout the building and have found there is very little stratification between these spaces. We have no external shading devices on this building as we didn't require them to address the overheating. Instead, we utilise the deep reveals created by using natural bio-based insulation, and in combination with purge ventilation, this provides enough shading to be comfortable and gives us lovely deep sills internally. Material and design choices were all guided by our approach to create a healthy, low-impact building. We paid careful attention to minimising waste during construction, completing the build with no soil being taken off-site and without a single skip. All surplus material was either recycled or passed on to others to use elsewhere. We had a strong desire to keep the detailing simple to execute. At the outset, there were very few suitable timber frame companies in the UK. However, now we could use a specialist who would erect a bio-based frame within a week. I kept a detailed blog throughout the whole process to share our journey and hopefully aid others in their pursuit of a similar self-build. So we built a Larson Truss timber frame over an Isoquick insulated raft foundation with an I-joist flat roof structure. The whole building is filled and finished wherever possible with wood fibre insulation, along with wood-based vapor open boards, one of which doubles as the AVCL. A retrospective analysis confirmed that our material choices have created a very low carbon building. If the architectural features, such as the diagonal cladding and internal joinery, were stripped away, at its core, this building is of simple construction and straightforward detailing. For us, this home is a demonstrator, combining contemporary architecture with an exemplary approach to sustainability. By caring for both people and planet, we can limit carbon emissions whilst maximising health and well-being through joyful and creative architecture. As it was a self-build, the construction cost was inevitably low. Here you can also see running costs, noting both the Passivhaus Trust unit cost for comparability alongside our actual running costs before we got an EV in 2021. Austro only uses 21% of the energy of an equivalent 2013 building regs building and only 33% of the energy of an equivalent building built to the 2023 Scottish standards. For us, this house delivers a key message. The materials and technology required to achieve Passivhaus certified low embodied carbon buildings have existed for many years. The minimal environmental impact of this home is translated into a minimal architectural vocabulary. Nothing is unnecessary or superfluous, and all parts meaningfully contribute to the story of the building, its beauty and durability in the face of the climate crisis.
When we decided to build this house, we knew we wanted to adopt a fabric first approach so the building would minimise energy demand before turning to lots of renewable technologies. So to do that, we decided to go with Passive House. We knew from the outset this would be a self-build and done on a tight budget, so although we got some support and help from our friends, the two of us built and finished most of this house in our free time alongside running our architecture practice.
In addition to Passive House, we wanted to make a really holistic, sustainable building, so we made careful material choices, prioritising natural materials whenever we could. We decided to meet the voluntary gold standard in the Scottish building regulations, which requires a higher level of performance in relation to other aspects such as acoustics and water saving, for example.
So our main goal was to combine these sustainable ambitions with a home that had some drama and excitement and overall is just a pleasure to live in. Internally, the spatial layout clearly articulates the architectural concept, and so everything is organised around this exquisitely crafted, black-stained timber joinery element, a box within a box that houses the stair and all of the wet functional spaces and features secret storage compartments. This spatial arrangement then allows the living spaces and the bedrooms to receive all of the daylight and the views to the garden and the landscape beyond.
What we've enjoyed most since we've been living here is really how comfortable it is. The monitoring we've done has shown the predicted energy demand to be exceptionally accurate, and this experience has altered our company's course by embedding a commitment to design all new build projects to the Passive House standard.
Fantastic presentation and video. Thank you for sharing your home with us. Also good to know that you're taking guests, so I'll note that way. Okay, so now on to our final presentation in the residential new build category. So this features an innovative One Planet Passive House. This remarkable straw insulated SIPS project embraces off-grid living. I think it's the first fully off-grid passive house. So it's located in Wales, and the project stands as the UK's first certified passive house to meet the One Planet development criteria. It's been designed and constructed by Jonathan Davies and Huff and Puff Construction, and this home really showcases the use of bio-based materials, which is a kind of recurring theme in these awards. Lots of the projects embrace these principles, so while not necessarily a fundamental part of passive house, it's really good to see so many projects embracing those concepts as well. It of course has passive house low running costs and minimal energy demand, but it also is perfectly aligning with the client's ambition to have this kind of off-grid living. So I welcome Jonathan to the stage to share the project.
Thank you, Sarah. Good afternoon, everyone. So Park Your Rodin is our 5-bedroom detached dwelling delivered as a One Planet development and the UK's first off-grid passive house. One Planet development permits residences on nature-depleted plots if the household commits to drastically reduce their carbon footprint and act as stewards to regenerate the land and improve biodiversity. Applicants must achieve self-sufficiency from land-based activities, and this extends to meeting all energy, water and waste treatment needs. By aspiring to the Passive House standard, we could deliver substantial reductions in operational energy versus a conventional dwelling, and prioritising biogenic and recycled materials reduce the embodied energy while also creating a healthy and natural internal living environment. This project is now being used as a precedent to demonstrate how the core principle of One Planet development, conscientiously reduced consumption, can deliver low-impact, high-performance buildings. The form is a typical gabled residential typology with the material lending a contemporary agricultural aesthetic. The eco-cocon walls and the blown cellulose roof are clad in locally sourced larch and corrugated metal respectively. Accommodation is spread over 2 stories with both levels arranged around open-plan living spaces for the young family. Informed by Lifetime Homes, the master bedroom is located at ground floor with an accessible shower room to ensure the dwelling can meet its occupants' needs for many decades. The design has been carefully considered to maximise winter solar gains and occlude direct summer sun. This has driven the elevational design, with glazing concentrated on the southern aspect, protected by deep reveals and extended eaves. A veranda wraps around 3 sides of the house to augment the solar control and provide valuable covered space against the Welsh weather. Combined with summer bypass on the MVHR, these latent solar control strategies deliver 0% risk of overheating, with no need for occupant intervention to maintain comfortable internal temperatures. Views of the wider landscape are presented through generous glazed openings off the double-height living spaces. A double-height volume connects these living spaces across the 2 floors, amplifying the effect of natural light and extending the outlook across the countryside. Window design establishes favorable ratios of glazing to frame to minimize heat loss and maximize the benefits of solar gain, daylight, and of course the vistas. The predicted EUI is inflated by the relative inefficiency of the heating and hot water supply, a wood-burning stove that sits in the middle of the house and on which meals are prepared. However, despite this focal point, the measured energy use last year totaled just 39.54 kilowatt hours per square meter GIA. This comprised 15 kilowatt hours of electricity supplying the MVHR lighting and other unregulated demand, and approximately 24.5 kilowatt hours biomass, fulfilling heating, hot water, and cooking requirements. This is in part testament to the efficiency of the building, but more so the determination of the family to consume less. Temperature and humidity were monitored throughout January and February 22, and as expected, the overwhelming trend is one of consistency. Regardless of external temperature fluctuations, internal temperatures were stable around 20 degrees. While humidity starts high, reflecting the recently applied clay plaster finish, it soon settles around 60%. Similar trends are observed in summer. External temperatures varied from 10 to 34 degrees. Internally, the temperature range was 3. Humidity appears slightly more chaotic, but ultimately smooths the peaks and troughs to maintain a range of 50 to 70%. As my first Passive House project, and one on which certification wasn't resolved until after building, obviously not recommended, specification of high quality and often Passive House certified components and systems ultimately made it possible. EcoCon's certified SIPs comprise the majority of the external envelope, with foam glass installed below slab and blown cellulose between the composite timber roof purlins. Using thermally broken straw-filled panels had the distinct advantage of a ready detailed range of Passive House compatible junctions, and they arrive in great hairy blocks ready to be maneuvered into position. Hawkland Group, the experienced natural builders who put the thing together, and now practiced Passive House deliverers, were on site and led the assembly, followed by Di Rees, who provided expert air tightness guidance to the clients. Starting on site in the summer of 2020, we were very fortunate that despite the unprecedented events, the knowledge of the contracting team and robustness of the products delivered the building to the aspired standards. Familiar to all good natural builders, the main concern was ensuring adequate protection to and detailing of materials to ensure they could easily shed water. West Wales is not known for its dry spells. A huge challenge, and one wholly undertaken by the client, was ensuring an adequate energy strategy. As an off-grid development, Parker Rodin cannot import electricity to meet shortfalls on those consecutive dark winter days. This was critical in resolving to meet heating and hot water demand with biomass, as it greatly reduced essential electrical needs, allowing for relatively lean generation and storage capacity. Quantitative life cycle assessment through pH ribbon bore out qualitative assumptions. Achieving Passive House using biogenic and recycled materials allowed us to surpass the Letty and Reba 2030 life cycle embodied carbon targets. Energy generation contributes significantly to the embodied carbon. If connected to the grid, this could have been substantially reduced, potentially facilitated more efficient heating and hot water systems. Conversely, as all electricity was generated on site, the only operational costs incurred were biomass at a rate of approximately £2.29 per square metre of GIA, less than 10% of the equivalent building regulation compliant dwelling. Maturation of the development will see this reduced to zero, as on-site forestry is anticipated to meet 100% of biomass needs within 24 months. In its rural context, sufficiency is its greatest accomplishment. And our awesome project team. Thank you.
Before we had this house, we lived around the corner in an old Welsh cottage, which was always a bit damp and cost us a lot of money to heat.
Always cold.
And then this piece of land came up for sale.
Although it wasn't perfect scenario because we had twins who were 1 and a child who was just about 4, but we thought if we don't do it now, we will never do it.
So we applied for planning permission under the One Planet development scheme, which is a Welsh Government initiative where you can build on agricultural land, but you have to have a sustainable project, you have to supply your own energy, you deal with your own waste, have a zero carbon building, etc., etc. So it's quite a difficult thing to meet all those requirements.
We didn't want to build lots of different buildings on the plot. We wanted to sort of keep it all together, and we thought this is a very cost-effective way of doing it. So it needed to be a very functional, almost farmhouse, where we can process all our crops. We always said if we are ever going to build a house, we want to build a passive house.
The aspirations for this project have always been aligning with the One Planet ethos, which has really driven everything, all the choices. So we were looking to achieve something that would be low operational energy and low emissions therefore for the lifetime of the building, but Brendan and Ludka were also really keen to make sure that it had low embodied carbon. Overheating was a fairly critical aspect of this. We wanted to make sure that Brendan and Ludka wouldn't have to use any form of active cooling, and that resolved itself into the idea of having that large veranda-type canopy at ground floor and the extensive eaves at first floor, just to make sure we had protection there for the duration, rather than needing anything mechanical or operable during those summer months.
Well, in the winter it's nice and warm, and if it's a sunny day in the summer it's just cool. And it stays a constant temperature. When it's really cold it's nice and warm in the house.
This should be a standard way forward. Houses should be passive houses.
Thank you, Jonathan. Fantastic project to bring to a close our residential new build category. So voting is now open. It will close in a minute. This is your last chance to vote in the residential new build category. So vote now. So again, as a reminder, if you can just go to your emails, if you're online, use the links from there. If you're in person, use the QR code. The People's Choice Award is open as well, but maybe hold your vote for that one because we've still got more presentations to hear from after the coffee break. So we're now going to move into a 20-minute coffee break. For those attending in person, you're going to be treated to refreshing drinks, and I think I saw some snacks next door earlier. For those who are joining online, I do apologize you can't join us for those, but I hope you've got yourself well equipped at home to make some tea and coffee and have some biscuits. So make the most of the 20-minute break. I apologize again, we couldn't get to questions during the session, but it does mean we're running bang on schedule, so that's good, and we get our full coffee break. It does mean that all the speakers, while you're having your cup of tea, there might be lots of questions coming at you from other people who've been in the room, so hopefully you're okay with that. And on that note, I would just like to give a round of applause again to all of our shortlisted categories, projects in both non-domestic and the residential new build. Okay, so reconvening at 3:50. Welcome back, everybody. Please take your seats. I hope you've enjoyed a refreshing break and had a chance to explore the showcased projects and speak to our sponsors who are all over in the garden room. I also heard there were cakes, which I missed, so I do hope that you all enjoyed those cakes. We're now moving on to our final category. So let's see if I can, there we go. So we're now moving on to the final category, which is the residential retrofit category. Again, before we dive into the presentations, we're just going to take a moment to appreciate the remarkable achievements in the sort of growth of passive house retrofit in recent years. So over the years, we have witnessed the kind of transformative power of retrofitting existing homes to meet the rigorous passive house EnerPHit standard. And this approach not only improves energy efficiency, but it also enhances comfort and reduces environmental impact. The success stories of retrofit projects have inspired countless individuals, including myself, to attempt a passive house retrofit, but also whole communities to embrace sustainable retrofitting practices. So it's been really fantastic. So I now get to share the exciting detail about this category, which is that the competition was so fierce and the quality of the entries was so outstanding, our judges just couldn't bring themselves to shortlist 3 projects. So instead we have 4 exceptional projects today vying for the top spot. And this speaks volumes kind of to the dedication and innovation of the Passive House community, and particularly that Passive House retrofit community. So without further ado, let's delve into the presentations and get inspired by their remarkable achievements and this transformative potential of Passive House retrofitting. So I want to introduce our first finalist, who is Harry Paticus. I haven't seen Harry, but I keep being told he's here. There he is, hiding behind the curtain. So Harry's going to be showcasing his own home, which is a fantastic project. It was a phased retrofit of a 3-story 1970s mid-terrace townhouse. And it used, again, bio-based materials, a recurring theme of the day, I think. And it was a step-by-step approach as well, which makes it a really interesting project and actually widely applicable as well. So Harry is from Retrofit Action for Tomorrow, and he's going to be presenting the journey that he had, I think it was a journey on this project, and hopefully giving us some valuable insights that he gained along the way. So prepare to be inspired. Over to Harry.
Okay, there's a somewhat irony that you see me seated there, because actually in this house I'm usually either working or doing DIY. There's also an irony that my son is practicing the piano, because that's another issue. So this project is very, very modest. We've spent 90,000 to date. But it punches above its weight, so to speak. It's had an enormous impact on my life, on my professional life, but it's also led to the creation of a new company, and we're now employing over 20 people. So it's had a really big influence in my circle. But last year we worked with about 150 schools across London and about 5,000 indirectly through the Church of England engagement and resources that we've been creating for them. So we have actually created an enormous impact from a very small project. So we're on actually step 4. This was the pre-certification Mead. Thank you, Mead, Kim, for this. This is the pre-certificate. So we met the criteria for NFIT, for a step-by-step NFIT, and I believe it was the first in the country. And my poor son, in the video you'll see in a minute, he has to say that we are the UK's first step-by-step passive house NFIT retrofit, and it's really quite a mouthful. So if you want more technical detail about this, there is a masterclass that I did with Bob Pruitt. And that's on the Passive House website, and it's very detailed, all about the technical stuff, and obviously we don't have time to go into it now. So the project is in southeast London. As you can see on the drawing on the right, there's a typology of about 20 houses that are very similar, and there's further houses to the right, which are also similar. We managed to catch the day when the cavity wall insulation was installed in our house. That's the big red van. So it's kind of amazing that it happened when Google took this view. It's a mid-terraced house, 3 stories. This shows we started the insulation in the loft. We did loft air tightness and insulation first. We did the 2 bedrooms that we could live in them, and then we gradually worked down through the house. We've had an enormous range of sustainable approaches on this project, and they include opening it to International Passive House Open Days, having Passive House students round on a visit once. We've also leafleted the whole community to try and have a reach beyond just this one project. The house is we now have triple glazed windows across the whole house. We are airtight. We have MVHR. We have come off the gas. We have an SOS heat pump. We have solar panels on the roof, and we have a solar shading strategy. So we've basically put all our money into the performance. It is actually unfinished inside. It's livable, but as you'll see in the video, we still haven't put all the money into the actual finishes. So we have 3 finished rooms, which are the nice photographs that you see. And we have cork finished multiple ways. This is cork with a fire retardant and a white paint, so you actually see the texture of the cork through it. This is cork finished in a different way. And this is my son sitting down, which is quite rare. This is really showing the deep reveals on the windows created through the additional wall insulation. So we have cavity insulation and wall insulation, internal wall insulation. Last year, we made slightly, about 3% more than the predicted amount from the solar PV, about 4,000 kilowatt hours, and we used 3,700, including charging a car. So we've really delivered performance, and we're sort of really delighted with this. Obviously, this had coincided with the energy crisis as well. This is a quick thing about the solar shading strategy, and just want to say that I've long had a hunch that solar panels reduce heat gain in roof spaces, and my neighbours agreed to put a sensor in their loft space, and so I have one in our loft space and one in their loft space, and I can report that our loft space is 2 degrees cooler at the height of summer. So it does have a small impact. We also created these bespoke shades. I wanted to make sure that we reused as many materials as possible. And I think it was Paper Igloo who said they didn't have any skips. That's incredible. We did have a skip, but we did try and reuse as much as possible. And we reused all this insulation in my son's bedroom, and we mitigated the thermal bridges by having this was internal wall insulation with cavity wall insulation behind, so it wasn't an issue. I did a series of details. These were done during the week, and then I would do the DIY at the weekend. This is a recessed area on the ground floor. We converted a garage into a new space, and this is just a bit of air tightness on the ceiling. We have MVHR, and on the video, when you see lots and lots of air supply in the living room, that's because we're renovating the ground floor and we brought the MVHR up to the first floor. So if you're wondering what's going on. So that was the insulation before. This is what we usually find in roof spaces across most dwellings and schools that we visit. And obviously now we have a really neat 300 mil of insulation. We've replaced the windows with triple glazing. We've monitored a lot. That's my son looking into a hole that I drilled in the cork in the wall. Very excited. So we've been monitoring, looking at the hygrothermal performance of the house. We've been monitoring air quality. We've been monitoring relative humidity, CO2, and temperature. We've obviously got metering through Octopus. We've also got SMAPI, so we've got live energy monitoring for all of our circuits in the house. And perhaps this is one of the most important aspects of the project. These are the 10 houses on our street. This is my son with a poster that we created for the climate march. He created a poster, and at the end of it, he said, "Now we feel warm." It's a really important thing. So number 8, they have actually copied our exact windows, and they've put triple glazing in throughout their house. They're absolutely delighted. They're also going to get solar panels soon. Number 1 are architects, and they've been picking my brains for retrofit solutions. Number 5 has put in double glazing and just put in cavity wall insulation. That's Brian. TJ, number 2, has actually sought a lot of advice from me on asbestos. All the houses have asbestos, and actually me providing that advice has, I think, been really helpful to them because we removed it all from our house. And he is actually starting retrofit work soon. He's going to be insulating his loft. Paul is number 9. He is going to put triple glazing in very soon. So here they all are, and they are all genuinely doing works. These are the types of fabric measures that they'll be doing. These are the additional comfort, air quality and overheating measures. And then lastly, this is really about community retrofit. So we are influencing our local area, and we're really keen to sort of let that reach beyond into the borough of Lewisham and then ideally spreading out across the country. And I'm really happy to announce that Bob Pruitt and I are going to be writing a book. This is going to be published by the RIBA, and we're going to be writing a book on domestic retrofit, and we're just about to sign a contract, and it will be coming out in September 2024. What we've done is we've brought our work to bear from this house into schools. So this is a drawing produced by Raft that shows how the interactions and the engagement we do with schools is reaching out into the community. A lot of the learnings that we've done on my house and other domestic projects we've brought to bear into the setting. This is a section through a school. And so we've actually brought our air tightness, our engagement, our MVHR strategies, our cavity wall insulation details to bear on those projects. This is some of the engagement we've done. These are all pictures around the house at different stages of construction. And actually what we found is a half-finished house is great for visits because you see everything, you can see all the details. Then this is some engagement. This is the engagement work we've been doing with schools all across London. And this is a very recent output. We're working with a number of schools across the borough of Lambeth. And I'm just going to end on this slide, which is really But I have to say, we are very lucky to have freehold. We're very lucky to own our home. And I feel very lucky that we found Passive House as a way of delivering fantastic performance. So thank you very much.
Hi there, welcome to my house. My house is the UK's first step-by-step passive house retrofit. Come inside and have a look with me. We've got cork insulation here to keep the cold air out of our house in the winter and the warm air out of our house in the summer. Another triple glazed window, also fully airtight. These are filters for the MVHR system. Hi Dad, what are you up to here?
I am cutting the very last piece of cork, and then I'll be mixing the plaster. Do you want to have a go?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. So make sure you keep your hand on there really carefully. You don't move this because this is your guide, and then you just go up and down.
I've helped him before, lots, but I've never actually done some cutting. So that was a great experience.
There are certain walls that you might spot around the house where he's had a go at plastering, as one on the landing upstairs. He just showed a lot of interest, and the posters that he made captured little moments of what we were actually doing in the house. And then your school teacher let you put them up in the corner of the room, didn't she?
Yes. I felt very proud of myself because completely insulating our house is also very special.
What would I have to do to make it all nice and retrofitted?
Take out your gas boiler and then replace it as a heat pump.
It was just a complete added bonus that Dimitri was actually genuinely interested in what we were doing. That led to his posters led to him presenting to his school, that led to us creating workshops in local schools at his school as well. And of course that led to the formation of Raft.
And then I've noticed, because I'm quite interested in that because of the energy prices soaring, the panels on the top of the roof.
The solar panel gets the sunlight and then it creates more energy for us to use.
We want to work with schools, work with families, work with children, work with the neighbourhoods like this, and try and encourage people to retrofit their homes. So there is impact. Here's to neighbourhood retrofit.
Absolutely fantastic. Here's to neighbourhood retrofit everywhere, I think. Okay, I would like to welcome our next speaker, Heather McNeil from AD Practice, as she shares the remarkable journey of another suburban home. This time it's a 4-bed home in a conservation area. And this project demonstrates how they were able to get to an Retrofit Plus on the project. And it really is a way for us to retrofit our buildings to lead in this kind of climate action that we need everywhere. But they're doing it in such a way that it's sensitive to the architectural heritage of the area, and that is also really important. They've maximized the use of things like photovoltaics, they've eliminated gas usage from the building, and it's getting the building closer to that kind of net zero carbon that we all talk about. And it really sets an example that can be replicated at that larger scale as we look to take this up from the individual building to the neighborhood scale. So Heather, over to you.
Thank you. So a brief background on this. At the end of 2018, I was the 9th designer that our clients contacted. I was 26 years old, less than a year out of my Part 2 and not yet fully qualified architect. I'd recently passed the Passive House designer course, but had not yet put it into practice, but I must have said something right because they did put their trust in me and we did get there in the end. So it's built in the 1960s. It's detached cross-wall house with 4 bedrooms, which sits in a conservation area within Harpenden in Hertfordshire. Alongside retrofitting, we wanted to introduce natural light and flexibility of spaces for home working, entertaining and accommodating visitors, as well as catering for the client's love of cycling, which will become apparent in some of the photos. We use low embodied carbon materials throughout, particularly above DPC, replacing any structural steel with glulam beams and maximising on-site energy generation. This is what it used to look like pre-renovation. It was chilly, dark and outdated with many original fittings. And this is what we achieved.
it turned into quite a light, airy and flexible space, but you'll see more about that in the video later on. In terms of spatial planning, the key areas for our clients and wider strategies were the open plan living, kitchen and dining area, which you can see span front to back, for the flexible entertaining space, which was flooded with natural light, and the light and airy vaulted hallway and stairwell with the gallery landing above, which serves the bedrooms, 2 of which later turned into home working spaces thanks to COVID. For lighting and ventilation, it's quite apparent in the sections here, but the key strategy is the vaulted stairwell with the roof light at the top. This, along with the first floor window at landing level, allows the hallway to be flooded with natural light and act as a chimney for the purge ventilation during the summer months. The stack effect is driven by incoming air via the electric roof lights in the single-storey extension that we added to the rear of the property, which was a more secure way to ventilate the property, not reliant on opening any ground floor windows, particularly overnight. So here you can see it sort of started to set a trend for retrofitting within the street scene from 2019 to 2023. Unfortunately, the renovations next door weren't any fit, and that became very apparent during the snow, as you can see on the bottom right there. So how's it working? Due to the amount of energy generation within the building, it is hard to quantify the exact proportions of the energy usage within the building, but it is clear that it's outperforming the PHPP predictions by quite some margin. We've got actual heating demand of just 35% of the predicted value in PHPP, and primary energy demand is just 54%. The energy generation prediction was remarkably accurate at 97%. In terms of why does it work so well? Well, a lot of it comes down to our clients, one of whom was a software engineer, and he's installed a Loxone building management system, which controls all of the overheating strategies, as well as optimizing the usage of the solar PV to run heat pump, charge the battery, and car charging in a hierarchical manner to try and make the most of the energy generation that they have. The MVHR goes on summer bypass, and again, the Loxone system in the summer is configured to control the stack ventilation once temperatures reach the overheating threshold. It also controls the shading. There's external integrated blinds in all of the front windows and the master bedroom, again programmed with local climate data to prevent unwanted solar gains in the summer. We did initially have nighttime ventilation provided by opening windows as part of our PHPP strategy, but due to the proximity of the train line and sudden massively improved acoustic insulation performance of the house, the clients decided they didn't want to open a window anymore. So we did have fan coiled cooling just for the master bedroom, which was planned as a later addition should they need it. Over winter, we've got an 11-day snapshot here where you can see the external temperatures in traditional British manner fluctuated 19 degrees over 11 days, but the internal temperatures stayed remarkably stable, only varying by 3 degrees. So it performs pretty well. In terms of our internal temperatures, they're fairly consistent year round. The living area varies from 19 to about 25, and the master bedroom, again, from about 18.5 to just over 26, which is too hot for a lot of people in a master bedroom. So despite it being overheating being very minimized within the PHPP, we did have to look at some additional cooling. There's a few snapshots of some construction. I'd love to be able to talk you through it all, but I definitely don't have time to do that. But do ask questions later on if you do have any. Our client's main driver for the project was to reuse as much of the existing building as possible, none of which was straight or plumb, so it did make the roof particularly difficult to make airtight, and old external walls that travelled inside as part of the extension works also became very difficult to airtight, because clinker block apparently does allow air to travel through it remarkably well. In terms of our buildability features here, I think we've touched on it before, it's certainly a replicable solution that we had. The infill curtain wall panel system is very common across the UK in properties of this age, and it is perhaps a little bit more bespoke than some of the external insulation options that we had used on some of the flank walls, but certainly not beyond the wit of man to be able to replicate. Most details we used were as simple as we could make them, but we did have quite an interesting insulated box beam, which you can see on our section detail here on the extension. Turning to the embodied carbon, this is where it got a little bit tricky due to the high amount of solar PV that we have. So the headline figure is quite high, but recent reports have showed that PV saves roughly double the amount of carbon emissions embodied within the arrays. So it's perhaps not the most accurate reflection of where we're at in terms of embodied carbon. But because of the high sustainable materials that we use, the sequestering within the materials, particularly the wood fibre and timber products, left us at a net negative figure by quite some distance, and allowing for the fact that most buildings last for longer than 60 years, which is the average that people are rating within this system, it could be a lot more carbon neutral than it in fact first appears. Pre-retrofit, the clients were freezing, sitting under blankets, working from home, and had annual running costs of about £2,500, including both gas and electric. Post-retrofit, we obviously eliminated gas, and their annual heating and hot water costs were just £93.56, so less than their internet costs, and the total annual running cost was £750. So this has given us already savings of £1,750 a year, which are only likely to increase with increasing energy costs and the fact that they've now installed a large 10 kilowatt battery. Finally, lessons learned. Well, we're taking it forward onto future projects. As you can see here, we've got a PHI low energy working in St Albans in a retrofit situation on an end of terrace, which is perhaps a more replicable solution because there's many more of those. But I would say the main learning feature for us was the overheating aspect, and factoring in that PHPP only models overheating on an overall building basis rather than room by room. I do think it's something we need to think about, particularly on retrofits where we have less control over some of the orientation. Where we've got first floor bedrooms, we do need to look at how it can be cooled a little bit better because they are just too hot. So it's factored in for our future clients. But yeah, I think take home point, if I can do it, I think any of you guys can. So thanks.
It's great to be back. When we first came and met you, with you sat here in coats and under blankets working from home, was sort of like, this is why you need to retrofit it.
We knew it would be a big project to renovate, and the renovation we sort of wanted to integrate some energy efficiency aspects to it. So we spoke to yourselves and you were by far the most eager.
It was our first venture into doing certified passive house. It became my case study to get my part 3 and actually become chartered.
And you were the first architects to point out that this was cross-wall construction?
Yeah, David and I came out. I just remember him walking up the drive and going, oh, well, it's cross-wall. Well, we'll just replace the infill curtain walls. And yeah, your first retrofit.
That's right, yeah. As soon as you look at the house, you think this is ideal for an Retrofit conversion. The age of the house and the simplicity of, the form of it.
But it was very dark. So I think our design driver was obviously make it a lot more efficient, but try and increase the amount of natural light throughout. Adding on the sort of box to the end, just to give you that extra bit of flexible living space. The floor was definitely the trigger point for, are we going to try and push for Retrofit Plus?
It's a lot of work, but it's not an insurmountable problem.
Issues with old roof construction, nothing being straight or plumb.
In hindsight, it would have been easier to replace it.
What's made this project more striking, with it being in the conservation area, is that you do have the whole front pitch as a solar array, and everyone knows it.
The really nice thing about passive house process from my point of view is traditionally on a build the client would just think about what the building looks like and a little bit about how it functions, but it invites a lot more curiosity. As a client you can actually be aware of what goes into the building, what's inside the walls, and I think that leads to better results.
I'm working away on the video call in t-shirts. At various times I've got colleagues under quilts with woolly hats and fingerless gloves, through to working in the garden in the shade because it's cooler than indoors, but I can work in here in comfort.
It goes to show what you can do with a lot of building stock of this age.
Thank you, Heather, for that presentation. That was fantastic. I mean, I didn't realize that this was your first project. I didn't know it was your part 3 project. How fantastic is it, though, for an architect to be graduating and the first thing they design is a building with no performance gap? So well done. Amazing. That's great. Let's hope all architects graduating could do that. That should be definitely the aim. Okay, fantastic. So I want to introduce our next project. So we're going to have Richard Dziki coming up. Oh, you're right at the front. Wonderful. So he's from RDA Architects, and he's going to be presenting this really remarkable residential retrofit project. So it's a 1960s kind of modernist home, and it really showcases a very sensitive approach to a low energy makeover. And it implemented again the Passivhaus Plus, the Retrofit Plus retrofit standards, and it really has been ensured by doing that. They're really ensuring that sustainability is baked into the project. And I think there was an 88%. I hope I'm not stealing all your highlights here. An 88% reduction in the energy consumption. So get ready to be inspired. Over to you, Richard.
Hello there, thank you very much. And I'm really pleased that this project has finally got built. There's a little quirk here. I met the client here 4 years ago. Right, so the client I met through this. So it's quite interesting from that point, and it's a team effort. There's not just RDA Architects. We've worked with Ecospheric, we've worked with other people, so that's quite important. The submission is a modernist benefit. It's a modernist building. Our client bought a modernist house in Brixton Hill. It was designed in the 60s by a well-known architect, Michael Blackstock, and had not been touched for 60 years. We've managed to get the building to Retrofit Plus standards, allowing the home to face the challenges of the future whilst being faithful to the original design aesthetic. As you can see, the house is located in Brixton, I'm repeating myself, southwest London, and is in a conservation area. The orientation is southwest and northeast, and it's surrounded tightly by the urban fabric. So this is the building that was bought. Using the existing structure is an important way of saving resources. We all know that. The house was in need of extensive repair. It was drafty, the windows were useless, including the building fabric itself, addressing air leakages and dampness. So it had a lot of damp through the roof and so forth. Instead of demolishing this, we took a historical award-winning project, which we breathed new life into the building, using modern technology to extend its lifespan, hopefully for at least another 100 years. The building itself comes with the ability to generate more energy than demanded with the use of PV, Tesla Powerwall. We replaced all the doors and windows, improved the form factor. That was one of the most important things, by improving form factor, by transforming the original undercar garage area, because it used to, sorry, I won't move away from the mic. It used to have an area underneath where you could drive your car in. And that was it actually screwed up our PHPP big time, because you've effectively got this big void. So that was a real issue. And that we created into a heated space and created a workspace, a live workspace effectively. So we moved the entrance forward and we just squared the building off effectively. And that's what we did there. We simplified the ground floor plan. I'll go back, sorry. We simplified the ground floor plan. The spiral staircase was replaced to improve circulation. You can see the entrance being moved here, and we focused on the ground floor becoming an office and a lobby space to separate the professional and personal spaces for the client. The client is an architect as well, so she wanted an architectural space that she could have almost as a private space or workshop for her printing and the stuff that she was doing there. The first floor, again, was simplified with walls removed and creating 3 bedrooms instead of 4, and having a reasonable sized master bedroom. Before it was actually very tight. The new layout improves the connection with the garden. And the garden's quite interesting because we've got a rainwater harvesting system in there as well, and there's a lot of circulation and reuse of the water in the garden. The top floor is an upside-down living house. It's a 60s house, basically. It's very much like a Spam or Eric Lyon's house. It's an open-plan living room and dining area and an open-plan kitchen with a terrace. And in these sections, you can see how we levelled off the ground floor, because that was quite an issue as well. Now, here you can see the interior of the new entrance and the first floor living areas. This is the second floor main living space. This is one of the favourite spaces of the clients. Aline, she's here. A favourite, I think it's one of your favourite spaces, isn't it? And as a lot of attention was given to the wooden joinery. So the wooden joinery was really important because it keeps this sort of 1960s aesthetic. So we didn't want to lose that. But the issue really here, the big issue here, was how do we lower the amount of glazing? And we had to triple glaze all those fan lights. That was quite an issue because before that was single glaze, and that caused a lot of problems. How would this work for future use? The other thing that we looked at, a lot of it was about the energy performance, obviously, but we replaced the roof with a solar roof. So the actual solar panels are the roof. Yeah, so the solar panels act as the roof in this one. The heating demand is obviously lowered. We've got an air source heat pump, we've got a Mixergy tank, all the help from Ecospheric, and we've got a Tesla Powerwall battery, which, to be honest, the building management system was quite complex. And as you can see here, PHPEP estimates 6% of overheating per year. The total glazing is around 24% of the treated floor area. However, this is balanced with the use of triple glazing windows on the east and west elevations. The summer ventilation strategy is planned, so there is no need to open the windows whilst the MVHR is in use. It can be clearly seen from here that a large proportion of the heat losses are through the windows and doors. So that was something that we really needed to be careful with. Again, working with an existing precast concrete building and block work and so forth, it was really difficult. We really had to think about how we would get everything into the tight spaces. And we used, as I said, we used an MVHR system. The process of installing this was fraught. It was really fraught with difficulty, including trying to incorporate all the ductwork into existing buildings. As you can see, we're still monitoring the building and its use and adding tweaks and changes as we go through. It's only really been there for about a year. As you can see, there was a bit of a peak in the summer until we got our shading policy in place, and we've dealt with that now. The windows were taken out and everything was moved. We got rid of the render on the outside. And you can see the complexity of some of those junctions, which was really, really difficult. Again, staggered insulation was used, and we staggered it on the outside. The existing pebble dashing was removed. Insulation was installed on the facade. Difficulties occurred at the junctions, particularly adjoining the roof with the exterior facade. Also, on one particular side where we had to work on out of way around the existing fabric was the terrace, because it's got a top floor terrace. Using both the interior insulation and exterior insulation to maintain level access to the terrace, as well as a good head height to the internal space below. The details were the biggest challenge. So, we ended up spending a lot of time detailing this. This took a hell of a lot of time. Then the other issue really is to monitor the process. How do you monitor the process? How do you deal with this? Well, what we did, as you can see, we did air tests. Okay, we did air tests. We've only got a couple of. We did air tests all throughout the process, and it was really important to do the air tests even before we installed the windows. Yeah, so that was really, really important. That was something that we monitored throughout the process and whilst we were going through it. Again, embodied energy, as you can see here, these methods led to the house to be regarded as a by LETI as embodied carbon band A+, and it's also well within the RIBA 2030 and 2025 targets. That's a little bit more detail on this. I'm going to rush through this now. And finally, comparing with BREEAM domestic refurbishment standards, the building gets the highest credits of 7. That refers to the demand equal or lower than 100 kilowatts of hours per metre squared per year. The home consumes 88% less energy than an average UK home with a total energy demand in a year, according to PHPP calculation. The energy bills are as low as about £940 per annum at the moment. And this is for a building that really would have been knocked down. It didn't have a great deal of pride in the street. And now you've got this amazing building, which is beautiful, both inside and out, and hopefully shows what we should be doing. And really, I would appreciate if you vote for us, because this shows what we can and how we can future-proof our cities and create retrofit buildings or commercial spaces that really work. I mean, we've got so many of these 60s facades, but we really should be looking at them and embodying them. You know, I'm a son of an architect, so my father was an architect in the 60s. I'm going to shut up in a second, but you know, he built new towns and he worked on new towns and so forth. And what I don't want to see is all of that stuff being demolished. You know, I would rather see that stuff being refurbed. And really, I think that's the future. Thank you. My name is Richard Dajitsky. I'm an architect with 25 years' experience of designing ecological buildings and passive houses. This is a 1960s brutalist stroke modernist Retrofit project, and we've decided to make this house work for another 100 years or so and make something special of it by working towards net zero. Aline is another architect, so my client wanted to have a good input of how to design a passive house. The brief was to take a house that hadn't really been touched for about 40 years and to make it work and function in a modern way. But we basically gutted the entire house out, put new windows in and made it work for today's environment. We also made sure that the kitchen and the furniture that we designed, such as the doors and the architraves, was subservient to the ethos and the style of what the original architect felt. So the major features that we implemented when we were designing this as a passive house was mainly that we insulated all the walls to passive house standards, took the render off the building and re-rendered the building with insulation underneath it. There is an MVHR, mechanical heat recovery, and there is also an air source heat pump, a Mixergy hot water tank, and the Tesla Powerwall. I must also point out that this roof is all covered with solar tiles. We also have a rainwater harvesting system for gardening purposes, also potentially for the jacuzzi.
Thank you, Richard. That was fantastic. It's great to hear as well the kind of commitment to staying involved and fine-tuning the project to help it perform even better as it goes forward. And I think that's a very nice segue into our final speaker, Mark Siddox. Mark is really known for doing some excellent post-occupancy evaluation, and he's going to be sharing today a really impressive residential retrofit project. Oh, sorry, change the screen. There we go, at Shepherd's Barn, which is kind of striving towards getting towards that zero carbon emissions. It also achieved a really impressive air tightness target, and it used this kind of timber frame structure inside the original stone barn. I'm sure Mark will talk to us. The project also was recertified recently to the Passive House Retrofit Plus standard after adding extra renewable energy onto the extra renewable energy capacity on, so Mark is going to be providing us with some insights on how this transformation unfolded. So over to you, Mark.
Okay, so welcome to Shepherd's Barn, the first Passive House Plus and Retrofit Plus in the northeast of England. The project is just located outside of Durham to the west, just outside of Lanchester. The small holding includes Lanchester Community Gardens, which is a broader outreach project by Paul and Sunny Shepherd, which educates people about the climate change and the biodiversity crisis. The barn itself was in very poor state of repair prior to refurbishment, so therefore a number of walls had to be reconstructed and there was some underpinning that had to happen. And there was an asbestos roof that had to be replaced in this process. What we've done is we've kept a very large open plan floor area and made use of some small double height spaces, should we say, to give a feel for what the barn was like before the conversion. And we've got some cellular rooms, which also provide the additional levels of privacy that you'd expect in a family home. The views to the south look across the Lanchester Valley towards an old Roman fort. and the deep window reveals provide shading during the summer. There's ample daylight. All of the windows were assessed using daylight factor calculations to avoid the risks of localized overheating. And the volumes and spaces kind of all interrelate with one another to give that good overall spatial impression, which led to the project receiving the RIBA North East Awards last year. All the finishes internally are natural finishes and low VOC, and sticking with the bio-based materials, everything above the floor slab is all bio-based. The changes to the eaves height of the eaves and the ridge still fit neatly within the broader area. And over on the west-hand side of the site, there is a photovoltaic array which generates electricity for the project. And there is a power wall on there as well. Paul and Sunny Shepherd sit outside on the south and west-hand sides of the property to appreciate the views. And the clean, simple detailing for where walls have been reconstructed also kind of marries in with the way the building was built in the first place. So we've got brick bands underneath the eaves detail, for instance. The extensive monitoring that was undertaken shows that whilst the PV array helps to generate or displace nearly 2 tons worth of carbon emissions, because it's connected to the grid, it's responsible for half a ton of carbon emissions, 70% of which of those emissions occur during the winter. So this pulls out the fact that zero carbon is a bit of a lie. You've got the one whereby the peak load and the space heating demand are such that it was satisfied the space heating demand method for passive house Enefit rather than the less onerous component method. Because of all the energy that's generated, the PV array generated £1,100 worth of income, and the household bills were £524, which means there's a net profit of £580 a year. So that means the PV array will pay for itself over the course of its life cycle. The summer comfort, basically we've monitored over 12 months, and PHPP predicted that the exceedance would be 2% of the year, and in practice we've measured it and it's 0.7%. So all in all, it's performing as predicted, and Paul Shepherd noted that we didn't feel uncomfortable during the 2023 heat wave. The most important lesson was attention to closing windows when the outside temperature was higher. Okay, so it's working as predicted and as well as we could have hoped. In terms of indoor air quality, using relative humidity as a proxy, then what we can see is that the humidity remains on average around about 51% and well within acceptable and ideal ranges. Having taken part in the Passive House Challenge during 2021, the property went for 10 days without heating and was above 18.5 degrees Celsius after that period. In terms of the project satisfies the RIBA 2030 challenge for in-use and EUI, with a 30% reduction relative to that challenge. And also you've got the LETI A rating for whole life carbon and upfront carbon emissions. The bogus idea that it's SAP zero carbon as well as this debunked. Basically, we used some timber frame to assist with prefabrication of the project, which meant that Paul and Sunny could undertake the work as novice builders, which helped to reduce the construction path, timeline, and also reduced health and safety risks on site. So thanks to Eden Insulation for that timber frame kit. The raft frame installation helped to reduce thermal bridging around the floor level, and the air tightness is such that it's the equivalent of basically £4 coins across the entire surface area of the property, compared to 175 if it was to building regs. I've mentioned the low toxicity paints and finishes. Basically, in keeping with the Ostro Passive House, basically we can recognise that the average new build home is responsible for 10 tonnes of construction waste. That was pretty much mitigated here to basically being only one small camper van load of material. The rest of it was reused, regathered and repurposed on the property. So we've got a 10.75 kilowatt photovoltaic array, which is generating all the electricity. And with the embodied carbon calculations that we undertook, we were able to demonstrate that the ones that have been installed actually reduced carbon emissions by around about 90% relative to other PV panels that have been used on other projects. There's over 110 trees that have been planted and 4 Milwaukee forests, which means that there is sequestration taking place somewhere between 1 and 4 tonnes per annum. So if you take that into account with the half-ton carbon emissions that arise, then we could start to say it's something equitable, but I'm always very cautious about calling it net zero of any kind. If you want to know more, go to passivhousesecrets.co.uk, and thank you very much.
Back in 2014, Paul and Sunny came to the Passive House Open Days up at Steel Farm. Afterwards, we got talking about this project that they wanted to create for themselves. They'd got a barn, they'd converted a barn next door, but it wasn't living up to their expectations, and they wanted to create where we are now into their forever home. So that started a 5-year conversation about how to create that home and how to build it. Shepherd's Barn is the North East's first passive house NFIT. What that means is it's been designed to minimise the amount of energy that's used for space heating and hot water, whilst also providing a very high standard of thermal comfort both in the summer and in the winter. So how are you finding living in the house?
I'm really, really happy. I think it's just feels very comfortable. The links to the outside really enjoy. So it's like, the terrace is like an extra room, which we use a lot. Air quality is fantastic. The light is good. We use all aspects, like the west side, we come out and sit here and have meals quite frequently. We've got a sunken area on the south side that we can go if there's strong southwesterlies coming in. So it sits in the environment really well.
It's not a massive house, and I wouldn't want a massive house. It's plenty big enough when we have the family round, but it's also not so big when there's the two of us there. It's very easy to live in, it's comfortable. We know it uses very little energy, which is the big thing. That's what we really wanted, was a house that didn't use much energy, and we know it doesn't.
Well, we're completely self-sufficient, so we've got 0 energy costs. We're actually exporting to the grid.
So really, we only have a couple of radiators on for a few hours a day for a few months of the year.
Thank you, Mark. What a fantastic project. Really interesting as well to see that kind of take that kind of holistic sight as well, to think about how that impacts how our buildings sit in the world as well. Okay, so we've now reached the residential retrofit voting part. So again, please cast your votes. Votes will close in 1 minute's time. So if you're online, go to your member emails. If you're in person, you can use the QR code. So 1 minute, and then we will be closing the voting for that. So before we conclude, I just want to take a moment to kind of reflect on the outstanding finalists across all 3 categories today. So both the residential new build, the residential retrofit, but also that non-domestic category. We've witnessed really remarkable achievements, innovative designs, and a commitment to sustainability in each and every project. And I think they would all be worthy winners. So it's going to be very interesting to see which projects make it to the top of the voting today. Okay, so it's now time. Okay, great. So it's now time also to introduce the final opportunity for everybody to participate in the People's Choice Award. So this is the one I was telling you that I was going to save the voting for the end. So if you've been saving your vote, now is the time to make it count. So if you're online, the team will have been posting a link to this vote in the chat, so you don't have to go to your emails. This is completely open to everybody, not just Passive House Trust or member organizations. So get your vote in now for the People Choice Award. And again, that's across all 3 categories. Consider all 10 of those projects in making your decision. And I can give you a 20-second countdown. Yeah, get your votes in. Hopefully no one's technology is failing. Oh, no, you don't. No, you don't get any extra time. That is it. Okay, let me just check what no, okay. Wonderful. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed Passive House Trust members, guests, and participants, and I should add clients as well, knowing that we've got some clients in the room, which is always fantastic. We have come to the conclusion of the Passive House Trust Awards 2023. It has been a truly inspiring event, really showcasing the incredible achievements and innovations in this field of passive house design and the construction industry in the UK. We're proud to have witnessed the exceptional talent and dedication displayed by all of the finalists today. So well done, guys. A huge congratulations to all of you. Okay, now the team are like very quickly getting all the finalists together. They're going to be preparing for giving the awards. So while they do that, I am just going to share some important updates and news with you. So firstly, mark your calendars for the next exciting Passive House Trust in-person event. So we've got our UK Passive House Trust conference and tours in Edinburgh this year. It's going to be running over the 16th and 17th of October. Please come up to Scotland to visit us. That's where I'm based. It's a very lovely part of the world, so you will really enjoy the conference if you come, so please do. Oh, it's gone, that's fine. We also, I can announce that we launched our How to Build a Passive House guide. Oh, that's the one in the middle there. So that was launched on the 21st of June. This is a revamp of a document that we launched initially in 2015. It's a great guide for people who are working maybe on their first or second passive house project and want to get some top tips from the established passive house community. So it's a really good guide for those looking to design and deliver passive house projects. And then finally, I also just wanted to highlight this PHPP, we're not quite sure what it's going to be called yet, alignment tool potentially, which was piloted for the awards. So this was developed for the Passive House Trust by Delta Q, and it's a new PHPP plugin tool that is streamlining the process basically of exporting data from the PHPP to compare it with other UK compliance regulations and targets. So both with the REBA 2030 challenge targets and also with the LETI guidance. So the tool is really useful. It also gives you really easy to read out like EUI targets, which is not a terminology we use in the passive house community hugely. It's definitely something that gets used widely in the UK though. So we thought it'd be useful to have this tool. So a big heartfelt gratitude to Piers, who I can see is in the audience from Delta Q, and also Tristan, who was working a lot on this tool as well. So thank you very much for your work on this project. Thank you, guys. And I'm sure you all now want to download it, so I can tell you it's not yet ready for download, but it will be soon. It'll be ready soon. Okay, so now, without further ado, let us move on to the moment that we have all been waiting for, the announcement of the winners in each category. The anticipation, I feel it in the room. It's high. The competition has clearly been very fierce, and it's very exciting to be at this moment. And I think that it's really a testament to the immense sort of talent and commitment to this group that these projects were all such worthy potential winners. So just once again, I want to thank you all the participants, the sponsors, and the supporters who've made this event possible. Your passion and dedication to sustainable building practices inspire us all. So now it's time to celebrate the winners and their outstanding achievements in advancing the vision of sustainability as a future that we can all aim towards. I do have some final closing comments, but we'll do that after we've announced the winners. Okay. So we'll take a moment. Let me just see what comes up. It's just going to come up with the winner, is it? So I can't click it. I don't want to get it wrong. And it says, okay, let's take a moment. I'm just going to do this without anything on the screen because I worry about what it might say. To revisit the incredible projects in the non-domestic category first. So we kicked off with Paul from Hamilton Architects, who presented the groundbreaking Urn Campus, which, if you remember, was the world's first passive house premium project. Then we had Peter and Julian talking about Tully Foster's Falls Hill Health Centre, which is really revolutionising our approach to healthcare. And then last, but certainly not least, was Archetype presenting their visionary Hackbridge Primary School, which really is that beacon to that kind of zero carbon excellence, inspiring young minds to embrace that sustainable future. So now, brace yourself as we build up the anticipation with a drum roll, please. You can all do that while I work at this. Okay. Okay. And I can announce the winner of the non-domestic category in the Passive House Trust Awards 2023 is Hackbridge Primary School. And John, I should also have introduced John Bootland, the CEO of the Passive House Trust, is stepping on stage. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it is time to unveil the winners of the residential new build category. So from innovative designs to cutting edge sustainability, these projects have really redefined what it means to create comfortable, healthy, energy efficient homes. And it was a pleasure to be able to award that commendation to Chester Road at that shortlisting stage. And then today we've been showcasing the three outstanding residential projects. So first up, we had Cannock Mill Co-housing, which is really combating loneliness as well as climate action. So really fantastic project presented by Anne. Then we had the Ostro Passive House, which is a beautiful modern building showing that sustainability can have real architectural merit, presented by Mary. And finally, the One Planet Living Passive House, embracing that kind of off-grid living, presented by Jonathan. So again, drum roll, please. Okay. Oh, okay. We didn't have an individual winner. We have two winners. Woo! I think this might be the first ever UK Passivhaus Trust draw. So this is wonderful. Okay, so I would like to invite both teams to the stage to collect your, I guess, share your champagne. So it's the Cannock Mill Co-housing project and the Ostro Passive House. Everybody come on. That caught me off guard. Okay, now it's time to announce the winner of the residential retrofit category. So we had 4 really impressive projects that really pushed the boundaries of sustainable retrofitting. So Harry presented us his Bowmansley Retrofit project and showed how that has spurred on all this community action, which is really fantastic. And then we had Heather sharing the Harpenden Retrofit Plus, showing that a newly qualified architect and passive house consultant can deliver a really outstanding project. And then we had Richard presenting that sensitive retrofit of that 1960s modernist homes, really showing that modernist architecture can be brought right up to present time in terms of the climate. And then finally, Mark was showcasing Shepherd's Barn, that rural barn, which is really striving for those 0 carbon emissions. So these projects exemplify that transformative power of residential retrofitting. I get so inspired when I see retrofit projects. I think it's such an important thing for us all to embrace going into the future. So each one has that unique story that it's able to tell and really demonstrates the immense potential of energy efficient retrofit. And if we can do it at scale, that's the next thing that we need to work towards. So drum roll, please. And the winner is Bowmansley. Okay, and now the moment we have all been waiting for. It's time to announce the winner of the People's Choice Award, which is voted for by everybody, not just our members. So this award really recognises the project that has captured the hearts and minds of both the Passive House Trust membership, but also non-members alike. All of our 10 shortlisted projects were eligible for this prestigious honour. So without further ado, let's unveil the winner. Drum roll! You're also good at it. And the winning project is the Earn Campus. Fantastic, very well deserving winners right across all of those, and as would any of the shortlisted projects be. Such an honor to have the projects presented today, so thank you so much. So as we reach the end of our online program, we extend our thanks for your presence and engagement online. Your participation has made this event truly special, and we hope you find inspiration in the remarkable projects and insightful presentations. We'd also like to express our sincere thanks again to our sponsors, to Ecological Building Society, Knauf Installation and Munster Joinery for their generous support. I would also like to send a huge heartfelt thanks to the rest of the Passive House Trust team who are dotted around, who work tirelessly. Who work tirelessly behind the scenes to deliver these events. With a special thanks going out to Yogini, I can't actually see her, but for all her dedication, oh there she is right at the front, all her dedication to running these awards. Thank you, Yogini. I would also like to send a huge thanks to Ben Adam Smith for the wonderful videos that he prepared for the awards in quite a short timescale. So thank you to Ben. Okay, now we would like to invite those joining us in person to transition to the garden room for drinks, networking, and the winners photo shoot. I think we're doing more photo shoot. And finally, before you all jump to the garden room, I would like to invite you to join us in the pub for the Passive House Trust Awards after party, where we can celebrate, unwind, and raise a glass to toast all of our shortlisted projects and winners as we mark the beginning of our Passive House Trust teenage years. So here's to a bright future ahead.